You are inside the studio with Powertex. Welcome to the Mixed Media Podcast for artists, crafters, and adventurous creators. This podcast is for you if your creativity cannot be defined by any label, and where the only limit here is your imagination. I'm Michele Brewer, Creative Director at Powertex UK. Now let's talk all things Powertex, mixed media, and creativity. Welcome back to the Powertex Studio Podcast and another of our special Pathway conversations. Today, I'm joined by Linda, whose Pathway experience has been about exploration, pushing herself creatively, and perhaps most importantly, rediscovering just how much she loves working with Powertex. We talk about the project she created along the way, the ideas and inspiration behind her work, and what happens when you're encouraged to experiment, take risks, and see where your own creativity takes you. So let's get into the conversation and meet Linda. So I am very excited to be speaking to the lovely Linda about her two sculptures from the Pathway. So Linda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name's Linda Griffin. I live in a place called Coleraine on the north coast of Northern Ireland. And I have, like a lot of people, seem to have fallen in love with Powertex. I first came across it in about 2016, I think. So quite a few years ago now. And I did some training to be a tutor, but life got in the way and that hadn't happened. So when the opportunity for the pathway came up, I jumped at it to refresh myself as to what you can do with Powertex and to have a focus and a bit of a kick up the bum to actually get in the craft room and use it.
And that you have, Linda. So you made both a headpiece and a signature piece. So I really want to start with your headpiece, Mother of Dragons, and I have your headpiece pictured behind me, so we can see the wings. Now I want to talk about the wings. So let's start with Mother of Dragons. Tell us about your headpiece sculpture.
I decided to make a sculpture based on dragons and Game of Thrones because I am a massive fan of anything fantasy related, and the original Game of Thrones was also filmed in Northern Ireland. And I just thought this was the perfect opportunity to get stuck in and do something with wings. And didn't really have a clue what I was doing, but thought I'll just improvise.
Which is the
And
point of the pathway,
yeah,
isn't it? To try
yeah,
new things.
that's it exactly. So I had various bits of material, and throughout the discussion, various other people were talking about materials, and I think you had suggested using dishcloths. So
Oh,
the
did I?
wings, as for material, because of the texture, I think it was. So it was dishcloths and skewers is what I went with, not really knowing how awkward it was going to be. First of all, trying to get 4 skewers to stick in some stone art clay, not move, and then try and get enough material in the Powertex and then get it to stick to the skewer the way I wanted it to, and the skewer to still stay where it was and not move and all the rest of it. So there was a lot of assembly and hoping for the best and leaving it and being scared to come in the morning to have a look to see what had happened to it. And some of it I was happy with, other bits I wasn't quite so happy with. But that's how it goes. And I think you've got preconceived ideas in your head of what you're trying to make. And I think what I have learned is that you have to kind of let go with that, because it's just going to make what it wants to make, regardless of what you might think you're going to be making, if that
That's so
makes
true.
sense.
It does, Linda, because when you are pushing the boundaries and trying new things, it's easy for us all to stay in our comfort zone and make what we're used to and go step by step. This was not a step-by-step project. This was
No.
sharing techniques, and then you take the ideas and run with them, which you did. And I'm really proud of everybody that tried new things. And you had those challenges.
Yeah.
This was a challenge. You didn't join this program to just make something small and neat sit on your shelf. You wanted to really try these new things, which is what you
Yeah.
did. So I think you
Yeah.
definitely ticked that brief. So tell us about your signature piece.
My signature piece is, or was, came out of my stash. I had this fabulous polystyrene box that I'd been keeping with the aim of eventually Powertexing it. And I thought, oh, what are the options that we've got for this brief? And oh, a relic that you've dug up out of the past. Perfect. I know what I'm doing. And then it was kind of like, right, I know what I want to do. I've got this box. So I looked at the box and thought, yes, I'm going to do this. And then when I actually started it, it was like, this box is really, really big. This is going to take a lot of work, this box. There was a lot of discussion in my head about, what was I going to do with it? Was I going to try and mold shapes to go on it? Was I going to use molds that I had bought and use stone art to try and mold things? The molds I had that I was wanting to use were quite intricate, and I wasn't quite sure how well that was going to work. So there was a lot again of playing about with different consistencies and of the clay to see whether, and a lot of dusting of molds, and then trying to clean the mold out afterwards was a nightmare. And do I really want to make 6 or however many it was of this particular mold to go around this great big giant box? But I persevered and I was so happy with it. And then it was a bit like, now I have to try and color this. I'm going to, after all this work and it's all looking really nice, although it's just all ivory Powertex, am I now going to ruin it when I try and color this?
It's a
Oh,
common fear, isn't it? That
yeah,
you're going to ruin work
yeah,
when you get to cut the coloring stage. And you also had the added logistical element of needing your piece of work to be able to travel by courier,
that's it.
to be flown over or driven over to England for the exhibition. So you had to consider that as
Yes,
well. That, I mean, that I know that that had an impact on the piece of work that you were able to do. But
it
I'm
did.
glad that you went forward and you added
Yeah,
colour. You've
yeah.
got they're Celtic designs, aren't they, that you've put on there? And it looks like a relic stone box. You achieved exactly what you set
I
out
was
to do.
so delighted with it when I actually had it done. I thought this just looks fantastic.
You were really tough on yourself. I remember in the
Yeah.
program, you were very,
I
very
still
tough
I
on
still look
yourself.
at that head and go, I'm really not happy with it. So I keep looking at it and thinking, maybe if I try recoloring it, I'll like it a little bit better. But I don't know. Looking at it in the picture there, it looks quite nice.
It is nice. I think when you're very close to a piece of work and you work on it for a long time as well, you can really fall out of love with it and you can become very self-critical and you have to come away from it and
Yeah.
then revisit that piece of work. I think that's normal for all of us.
Yeah.
So your box was able to come to the NEC
Yeah.
and be exhibited there, which is very exciting. So how did you feel about being an exhibited artist at the NEC?
Still haven't quite got over it and, believe that it's actually happened. So it was unbelievable when you told us after we had sort of signed up and started on the pathway that this was actually what was going to be happening. It was a big shock, and it was like, oh my God.
I think it takes a lot of courage to exhibit your work in,
Yeah,
any kind of way, whether you're sharing a picture of it, whether you're showing people what you've done, whether you have got a photo on social media. But to have your work at the National Exhibition
yeah,
Centre, the largest arts and crafts show in the UK. So we didn't go small with this.
no.
We went out there. That took a lot of bravery and it's a huge achievement. I'm very proud of everybody that took part
Yeah.
in that.
I think the other thing as well is I was seeing throughout the pathway, we were seeing what each other was working on. And I think sometimes that was the fear as well, is that everybody else seemed to have so much more experience and be so much more artistic than I feel I am. So it was always that thing as well where you were coming into my craft room, looking at what I was making and having just seen this wonderful thing that somebody else was in the middle of creating and thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to look like I don't know what beside
Everybody
their
feels like
pieces.
that.
Yeah,
Um, I think that's part of the realization that you always imagine that other people are more experienced or they're more talented or they're more than you. And
yeah.
actually, people were coming at this from all different experience levels
Hmm.
and, different abilities. And some people were tutors, some people were quite new to Powertex at all different angles. It's impossible to compare yourself on an equal
Yeah.
footing.
And I think
Um,
as well, there was not just me, but there were several of us at different stages all said we were close to throwing our pieces out the window because it just wasn't going to plan.
Yeah, that and it very genuinely, they nearly went out the window, didn't they?
Yeah. At one point, I had managed to get the wings attached to my headpiece, had it all sitting and it seemed quite stable. Came in the morning and it had just jumped off the table onto the floor and
Oh,
the wings had come off. And it was like, I don't believe this.
so in those moments, Linda, what made you keep going?
The partly the fear that I have to have this for an exhibition.
That there was
But
this
again, it was
goal.
that thing that I had spent so much time and effort to get to that point that it was like, well, I can't just start again.
Yeah,
I have used all these materials. I've made these blinking wings. They are going to attach to this head some way or other.
I love that. You were in too deep. It was too
Yes,
late to turn around.
that's it exactly.
So I think your story of finding Powertex some time ago, and then you said that life got in the way, not to mention there was a pandemic and all sorts of things that the world
Yeah.
has been through. Lots of people will be able to relate to that and have a similar tale to you.
Hmm.
So it's inspiring that you have managed to come back to this. Powertex hasn't disappeared, and you've really you're having a creative moment, really, aren't you, Linda? Because you're really
Yeah.
enjoying creating again. And
Yeah.
has the pathway been part of that, do you think?
It has. It's definitely reignited my love of Powertex. Just seeing what you can make and what everybody else can make and all the ideas that everybody has come up with, even though we all had started off with a head.
We
How
started with the
how
same head.
we all started with the same head and the same pathway information, and everybody came up with such a different take on everything. It was fantastic. It really was, and I highly recommend it to anybody that's even remotely considering it. Just do it.
Just jump in and have a go.
Just yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for sharing your sculptures and your stories with us. I think it's really important for people to realize, like you said, you look at other people and you think that they know more and they can do more, but actually there's something for everyone in Powertex, isn't
Yeah,
there?
there is. And unless you start having a play and seeing what works and then figuring out how to correct things and what works and what doesn't work, you're never going to know. The stuff's just going to still be sitting there in the corner gathering dust, whereas at least I've now brushed the dust off.
You certainly have done that.
Yes.
It's been lovely working with you throughout the pathway, Linda. I know we've got more things to look forward to together, and I
Yeah.
can't wait to see where your creative journey goes next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Bye-bye.
Bye.
A huge thank you to Linda for sharing her pathway experience with us. I love hearing how differently each person has responded to the same program. The techniques may give us all the same starting point, but where each artist chooses to take them is entirely their own. And I particularly love that Linda talks about rediscovering her love of Powertex along the way. Sometimes we don't need to find something completely new. We just need something that makes us excited about creating again. You'll be able to see Linda's pathway work in full as part of our online exhibition. So keep an eye out for that, which goes live very soon. You'll also be able to take a closer look at her headpiece, Mother of Dragons, in her online brochure. The link is in the program notes. And I'll be back next week with another pathway conversation. Until then, remember, the only limit is your imagination.